New York is not easy. Living in New York is a test of character and will. Everything about it is a challenge, from grocery shopping, finding an apartment, laundry, dating, having pets, public transit, and even getting a workout in. Yet, millions of people move here every year. Some people move here for jobs, some people move for school, some people are looking for more diversity. Maybe they moved here for a boy or a girl, maybe they moved here for Gossip Girl, or in my generation, Sex and the City. I don't need to give you a reason why you should move to New York City. This is not that video. If you have any inclination to New York City, the city itself will give you a reason. New York has this strange way of just sucking people in if they just have any affinity to the city whatsoever, no matter how small. So in this video, we are going to talk about preparing to move to New York City and coming up with a plan, because having a plan is important. A plan keeps you from going around in spirals. A plan keeps you confident. And if you have a plan A, you should have a plan B, because the beauty of having a plan B is that you're willing to take more risk with your plan A. And with more risk, sometimes comes greater opportunities. So what goes into a plan on moving to New York? I'm going to cover 3 things to consider. But first, welcome to Urban Caffeine. My name is Thea and you're watching a channel that has deep empathy for transplants. So make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you won't miss future videos. The first thing that comes to most minds is funding. Whenever I talk about moving to New York City for those outside of New York, the first thing that comes to mind is how expensive the city is. It's true, New York is one of the most expensive cities in the world. And while it's true that salaries in the city are higher than salaries in other parts of the United States, not everybody in the city is making more than $100,000 a year. The median household income is $70,000 per year. That means half of the households in New York City make less than $70,000 a year. My point is, New York is not just diverse when it comes to cultural ethnicity and gender preference, but it's also diverse when it comes to income and social economic status. People who make less than the average in New York City make it work. There are people in the city making $20,000 or $30,000 a year, and they make it work, as expensive as New York is, just because they want to live in New York City. I look at funding in 2 buckets. There's the regular source of income and the initial expenses for the first months that you're here. Some people come to New York with a job or a business in tow, and others come with nothing in line. There's nothing wrong with coming to New York without any job prospects or anything in line. What's important is that you have a plan on how to come up with a regular source of income. For those coming to New York without a job prospect or anything in line, make sure you do your math so you save up enough to create a runway. And how much runway you should save up for depends on you, on how confident you are in coming up with a regular source of income. I say regular source of income because income sources come in different forms. Income sources can come from having an entrepreneurial mindset, getting a job, or a hybrid of both. If you have an entrepreneurial mindset and you have talent and skills to leverage, well, guess what? New York is the perfect place to make good use of that. For example, if you're a photographer, guess what? There are millions of people in New York City that have need for photography. There are a million things that are happening every day in New York City. There are weddings, birthdays, graduations, bar mitzvahs. There are also people that need headshots. There are a ton of startups that need brand photography for their brand. And if you're really creative and think outside the box, you're able to come up with ways of earning income through your skills and through just being aggressive. You might be saying, yeah, there are a lot of people out there, but so are other photographers. But if you know how to look, you can find clients. And what I love about New York is that professionals help professionals out. And since there are a lot of photographers out there, and photography is my example, but this could be applied in other professions, you can find a group of professionals that you can jive with, you can talk shop about, and you can exchange resources and ask for advice. So yes, There are a lot of photographers. Make use of that network. But if you don't like doing your own thing, getting a job is a popular option. Finding a job is a beast of a topic. There are whole YouTube channels dedicated to this, whole websites. You'll find seminars and courses. There are entire companies dedicated and helping you find a job. And so I'm not going to go through on how to find a job in New York City. There are plenty of resources out there on how to prep yourself to compete in the job market and find a job. All I can say is if you're already a high earner and you make buku bucks, watch out for lifestyle creep, because lifestyle creep is real, especially in New York City, where there's so many things to spend on. There's so many places to go shopping, places to eat, all this entertainment. And if you're not tracking your spending, you could be spending thousands, tens of thousands of dollars just like that. If you're a person who has an average income, having a budget is very important. Say you're making the median household amount. After taxes, government stuff like Social Security and Medicare, plus your retirement and savings, you're down to $38,000. And $38,000 in a full year can deplete so fast in this city. So make sure you have a budget and you stick to it. If you have a below average income, it's okay. You'll just have fewer choices when it comes to rent and forms of entertainment and other everyday expenses. But you can augment your income by other means, like having an entrepreneurial mindset. So many people have gigs in New York City. Some examples I could think of is this graphic designer. Oh my God. A few that I could think of is this graphic designer who also sells on Poshmark on the side, and they're pretty good at it. There's also this writer for a marketing company who writes obituaries on the weekends. And there's also someone who works in the service industry who's also a dancer. You don't have to stick to one source of income. You can have your day job, you can have something on the side, you can have your main hustle and have a part-time job. It's a matter of just being creative. The second thing you should plan for is how to fund the initial months in New York. This also includes the runway, but let's say you already have a job in line. Don't forget that moving to New York City, the act of moving itself, can be expensive. And whatever you think you're gonna spend in New York City, just double it. I find that no matter how much you saved, you're always gonna spend much more than you thought. And like I said, even if you don't save for a runway because you already have a job waiting for you, remember that you don't get paid on day one. You start your job and then you get paid either 2 weeks or even 4 weeks later. So you have to consider those days that you've started your job but you haven't gotten your first paycheck yet. Things to consider during your initial months in New York is the cost of moving, the down payment on your apartment, the cost of settling in, and the city itself. When it comes to moving expenses, questions that you should ask yourself are you going to hire movers? Are you going to rent a truck? Or do you need storage unit because you don't have an apartment set up yet and you need time to look for one? So make sure you set aside enough budget for the moving itself. When it comes to the down payment of your apartment, the standard in New York is the first month's rent plus an equivalent of a month's rent as a security deposit. Some places will ask for 2 months worth of rent. And if you're using a realtor, you're going to need to pay them a fee as well. There are ways to find an apartment in New York City without a realtor, and I've actually made a video on that. It's an older video, but it still applies to today, so check out the link in the description below. And when you do move, whether you have furniture or not, there are always these small things that you have to buy for the apartment to truly get settled in. Maybe you need extra drawers and shelves, or perhaps the windows are not right and you need to buy blinds, or maybe it's summertime and you need to buy a fan or AC unit. Note that in New York City, centralized air is hard to come by. When I first moved in, it was the end of spring and my roommate at the time was just hounding me to buy an AC. And I'm so glad that they did because that thing was a lifesaver. There are many things that are out of our control that we can't plan for, so having a little bit extra to pay for those things when we settle into our apartment is good to have. And of course, you'll be in honeymoon mode when you first move to New York City. You're gonna want to eat all the stuff and see all the things. And if you already have friends here, they're gonna want to go out with you and celebrate. And if you're making new friends, they're gonna go out and celebrate. On that note, make sure you watch my Free Things to Do series. I publish a video on the last Saturday of every month to give you ideas on free things to do. So check out that playlist, link is in the description. So we looked at funding, let's look at your stuff. When I first decided to move to New York City, I gave myself 6 months to plan it out. Whether I had a job lined up or not, I was gonna leave 6 months from when I decided to move. But luckily, I was able to find a job within a month of job searching. But that shortened the amount of time for me to save up for my move. I already had some money set aside. That was my rainy day funds, but I didn't want to really dig too deep into that. I'd still want to have some emergency funds in case something goes wrong and I need to go to the hospital or something like that. So that's when I decided I should just sell my car and all these things that I probably don't need to take with me. And so selling my car paid for the down payment on the apartment and helped with the initial expenses that I needed for settling in. And also remember, like I said earlier, yeah, I had a job lined up, but I didn't get paid for another month because the job I had would pay at the first of the month. So I'd start my job and then wait 4 weeks until I could get my first paycheck. So that first week of living in New York was something I had to figure out. Otherwise, had I not gotten a job right away, I probably would have waited that 6 months. I probably would have reached my savings goal to create a runway, and that wouldn't have been a problem. But I'm glad I did sell my car because I did the math, and even though I had my car fully paid off, I would still have been paying a lot on just owning a car in New York City. I would be paying close to $600 a month just to have a car. And for some perspective, that's about $7,000 a year. Even if I took out garage parking and parked on the streets, that's still an annual $3,200 a year. So by selling my car, not only did I come up with a decent amount of funds for my move to New York City, but I also did not commit myself to this. When it came to my stuff, I didn't really bring much furniture. Actually, I didn't bring any furniture except for my desk, which I kind of regret because I turned down a lot of good apartments because of the size of my desk. And I didn't bring much stuff just because A, I didn't know what type of apartment I'd be living in, and B, there was the possibility that the apartment could already be furnished because I was looking for a roommate and that roommate could already have furnished the apartment. Do not underestimate the tininess of New York City apartments. This is when your KonMari powers become useful. Like I said, I was sacrificing some really good apartments because my desk was so large and I knew it wouldn't fit. And as a tip, if you have special furniture, bring a tape measure with you so that you could measure it out when you're looking at apartments. So you might want to think twice if you really want to bring that couch your grandmother owned to New York City or not. Moving with just what you need is so useful, and it's useful if you're already a minimalist. And a future video that I want to cover is how to KonMari your life while living in New York City. So subscribe and stay tuned for that video. But the point to all this is don't bring too much stuff. Just bring what you need because there's so many unknowns, especially if you don't have an apartment lined up, which I will talk about in a bit here, so keep watching. And the unknown is not just for your apartment, but also your lifestyle. Your lifestyle is going to be so different. You're going to be living as a commuter, someone who takes public transit frequently. So a lot of things are going to change. For example, I play tennis and my regular tennis bag is something that's over the shoulder and I used to just toss in the back of my car and go to the tennis league. But now because I ride the subway, that's not going to happen. That over the shoulder tennis bag is too cumbersome. It's hitting a lot of people on the subway. And so I got rid of that in exchange for a backpack, which was a lot easier to carry, a lot easier to maneuver with. Thinking back, I took all this trouble to pack certain gear, which I didn't end up using or I end up changing out. So an important question to ask is, do you really need all your stuff? Another thing you can do is just put your stuff in storage until you're absolutely sure that you don't need it. But at the same time, there's a danger to that because sometimes people put things in storage and they keep it in storage for an indefinite amount of time. So that's something to look out for. And the last item on the list is your future crib. In other parts of the country, people talk about the weather. In New York City, people talk about rent. Rent is a huge topic, just like looking for a job or how to find a job. How to find an apartment is huge. There are tons of videos out there on New York real estate, and we can really go down a rabbit hole on this. But I'm just gonna keep it superficial and talk about it in terms of moving to New York City. If you're a power earner and you can easily drop $10,000, $15,000 on a down payment for an apartment, and you do not want to deal with the colorful experience of looking for an apartment in New York City, yes, you can secure an apartment a month out. There are a lot of apartments out there newly built. You can easily reserve one if you're willing to put down the money. But if you want to save money and you want some war stories to tell, then brace yourself for the unique culture of apartment hunting in this city. I promise it'll make for interesting tales later on. When I had a job offer and had about a month to move, I was seeing a lot of job listings for apartments that were within my budget and that were in great locations. Unfortunately, every time I called, they were asking if I could see the apartment that day or maybe in 1 or 2 days. And I was thousands of miles from New York City, so not gonna happen. Eventually, I just gave up and I decided to just put my stuff in storage. Luckily, I had a friend who was willing to lend me their couch so I could stay with them until I could figure out where I was gonna live. Had I not had that friend, I probably would have gotten an Airbnb for a week or two until I could figure out my apartment situation. And that's the advice I can give to those moving here, is that look for an apartment when you get here, just because it's so fast. The process is so fast. I talk about this a little bit in my Q&A video that published not too long ago. With the current apartment that I have, I saw the listing in the morning and I went to see it that afternoon thinking, oh, I'm gonna be ahead of all these people. I'm gonna get this apartment. To my surprise, there were already 10 people ahead of me that looked at that apartment. But I was able to secure it and sign the lease within 3 days. And the only reason that I signed the lease within 3 days is because I had to unfreeze my credit. Otherwise, I would have signed it the next day. I think the hardest thing is that when there's a good apartment, it only stays in the market for a day or two. That's why it's important to have your paperwork ready so that when you see an apartment, you're ready for your background check, you're ready for all the screening that the landlord's gonna do. Paperwork for New York City apartment is something that you can look up, and there are tons of resources on that. I could also make a video. Comment below if that's something you're interested in. And also, when it comes to apartments in New York City, you have to be realistic and set your expectations, because it's not like other places in the United States. Other places in the United States, it's pretty common to have in-unit washer and dryers. In New York, that's not very common. Usually people do their laundry in laundromats, or there's a washer-dryer room in the building. Sometimes, if you're lucky, it's on your floor. The really expensive condominiums, the really expensive apartments do have in-unit washer and dryer, but they are very expensive. The other thing too that's not as rare as in-unit washer and dryer, but many apartments in New York City don't have this, is a dishwasher. So if you've been living in somewhere else in the United States, paying $1,000 on rent for a 2-bedroom with an in-unit washer and dryer, a garage for your car, the works, you kind of have to lower your expectations in New York City. If you're still watching this video, thank you for being so committed. Comment Happy New Yorking in the comments section so I can appreciate that you're still here with me. If you want extra content, I also publish videos on Patreon where I talk about my thoughts on videos that I publish, the challenges, and why I decide to publish particular videos. So check that out on patreon.com/Urban Caffeine. Thank you to all my valued patrons. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and Happy New Yorking.